You know what peace feels like when you've lived too long without it. Ethan Parker knew that peace was rare in his line of work. As a seasoned FBI agent, he'd been through countless undercover operations, cross-border raids, and high-profile investigations. But none of that compared to this one rare moment, lying beside a shimmering pool, the breeze soft on his skin, the laughter of his children filling the air. Lena, his wife, a brilliant civil rights attorney, had finally convinced him to step away from work just long enough for a real vacation. They had chosen a luxury beachfront resort in Florida, expensive, yes, but worth it for the memories they hoped to create. Their children, 12-year-old Jackson and 7-year-old Emily, were splashing in the pool under the sun's golden warmth. Ethan, in shorts and sunglasses, leaned back in his lounger and watched them. He felt grounded. Present. Free. But peace doesn't last when people look at your skin before they look at your heart. A tall security guard approached. His shirt bore the resort's logo, but his posture screamed something else. Suspicion. Superiority. "Excuse me, sir," he said coldly, standing over Ethan. "I need to verify that you're a guest here." Ethan removed his sunglasses slowly. "We're in room 305, he replied evenly. "You can check with the front desk." Lena looked up from her novel, eyes narrowing. "What exactly prompted this verification?" she asked, her voice polite, but cutting. The guard offered a tight smile. "Just protocol." "Of course," Ethan said, jaw clenched beneath his calm voice. "Let them check." But Lena's gaze didn't waver. She knew better. They both did. The guard radioed in. Then he walked away, but not alone. A second guard, younger and bolder, followed him back. "Sir, we need your family to leave the pool area while we verify your information." Ethan sat upright. "We've already given you our room number." "Is that not enough?" "Just doing our job," the younger guard said, his tone smug. "We've had issues with non-guests sneaking in." Lena stood. "You mean black families?" she asked, sharp as glass. The guards didn't respond. They didn't have to. Their silence was confirmation. Ethan looked over at Jackson and Emily. The kids had stopped playing. They were watching. Confused. Worried. "Let them check," Ethan whispered to Lena again. But something inside Lena cracked. "You're harassing my family," she said loudly. "And for what? We've given you no reason to question us. What you're doing isn't protocol, it's profiling." By now, other guests were staring. Some whispered. A few had already pulled out their phones. Ethan reached for Lena's hand, grounding her, calming her, but deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The resort's tranquil atmosphere had shattered. Within minutes, 2 local police officers arrived, summoned by the guards. Their uniforms were pressed, their faces stern. They didn't look around for context, didn't ask questions. Their eyes went straight to Ethan, bypassing Lena, the kids, and the tension in the air. The taller of the 2 officers, a white man with a rigid jaw and clipped tone, spoke first. "Sir, we've had a report of a disturbance. I need to see your ID." Ethan stood slowly. He'd dealt with men like this before, on crime scenes, during briefings, behind the scenes of justice. But never like this. Never as the target. "I've already told your security guards," Ethan said, calm but firm. "I'm a registered guest. Room 305. My name is Ethan Parker, and I'm an agent with the FBI." The officer didn't even blink. "Badge means nothing right now. Hand over a government-issued ID." Lena bristled. "He just gave you his badge." "I said government-issued," the officer snapped. "Not a toy." Ethan kept his cool. Years of training had prepared him for the most dangerous moments, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of disrespect in front of his children. "I'll cooperate," he said, reaching into his wallet and handing over both his badge and driver's license. The younger cop, cocky and loud, examined it before chuckling and tossing it back. "Still haven't confirmed with the hotel," he said. "Until then, we're asking you and your family to leave the premises." Lena stepped forward like a wave-gathering force. "This is illegal. You have no grounds to remove us. We're registered guests. And you're doing this in front of our children?" The older officer looked around, noticing phones recording, guests murmuring. "Ma'am, we're asking you to step back." Lena refused. "You're traumatizing our kids because we don't look like the usual guests." Emily was now crying silently, holding her mother's hand with tiny, trembling fingers. Jackson stood stiff, trying to be brave. Ethan turned to the officer. "You have everything you need. We're not leaving." The young officer stepped forward, pulling out his handcuffs. "That's it. Hands behind your back, now." The crowd gasped. A woman dropped her drink. "Are you serious?" Lena shouted. "Don't resist," the officer growled. Ethan didn't move. "You're making a mistake." But the cuffs clicked around his wrists anyway. His daughter screamed. His son flinched. Lena's entire body tensed, her hands trembling with rage. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she hissed. The officer laughed. "Yeah. Who, exactly?" Lena stepped forward, her voice low and dangerous. "I'm a civil rights attorney. My husband is a federal agent. And you just handcuffed him in front of his family without probable cause. Every second of this is being recorded." The crowd murmured louder. Some guests started asking questions. "Why are they cuffing him? That's not right. They're guests." The older officer turned toward the young one. "Landon, enough. Take the cuffs off." "But. Now." Landon hesitated, then unlocked the cuffs. Ethan rubbed his wrists as Lena stepped between him and the officers. "You just committed unlawful detainment," she said. "And I promise you, this will not be the end of it." A man in a Hawaiian shirt shouted from behind the pool chairs. "I've been here all week and no one asked me for my ID." Ethan glanced at his children. Jackson's eyes were wide and confused. Emily was shaking. He took a deep breath. This wasn't over. Ethan knelt beside his son, trying to steady his own voice as much as his child's fears. "Jackson, I'm okay," he said softly. "I promise." But Jackson wasn't listening, his eyes were fixed on the retreating officers. His fists were clenched at his sides, his face caught somewhere between anger and confusion. "They put you in handcuffs," he said, his voice trembling. "You didn't even do anything." Ethan's chest tightened. He glanced up at Lena, who was still locked in a verbal standoff with the resort manager and the senior officer. She was calm, measured, but beneath her words was a storm ready to explode. Emily clung to Ethan now, her small arms wrapped around his neck. "Daddy," she whispered through soft sobs, "are they gonna take you away again?" "No, baby," he whispered, stroking her curls. "No one's taking me anywhere." But inside, something had changed. The humiliation of being cuffed wasn't new. Ethan had seen other black men, doctors, veterans, college professors, face this same disrespect. But this time, it wasn't a news headline. It was him. And worse, it was his children who had witnessed it. Lena turned back toward him, eyes blazing. "I'm calling Ella," she said under her breath. Ethan nodded. Ella Hayworth was Lena's legal partner, a media-savvy civil rights attorney who knew how to make cases like this very public, very fast. As Lena stepped away with her phone to her ear, the resort manager wrung his hands nervously. "We truly apologize, Mr. Parker," he said, avoiding eye contact. This isn't our usual protocol." "Save it," Ethan replied curtly. I'm not interested in your prescripted apology. I assure you, we'll cover your entire stay, complimentary. Ethan's laughter was humorless. You think a free room erases this? The murmurs around the pool were growing. Guests now approached cautiously, unsure if they should speak. A young white couple stepped forward, both visibly upset. We saw everything, the woman said. That was wrong. We got here yesterday, and no one's asked us for anything. Her partner nodded. They didn't even blink when I walked out here with a cooler. But you? They went straight for you. Ethan nodded. Thank you. Your voices matter more than you know. Just then, Lena returned, her face tight with focus. Ella's already prepping media outreach and filing for a public complaint. We're going to hit both the police and this resort. Hard. The older officer had remained nearby, trying to calm his colleagues. He now approached, his tone noticeably less aggressive. Mr. Parker, he began, I'd like to apologize personally. This incident will be reported up the chain, and I can assure you. Ethan cut him off. Don't assure me. Just know that I've spent 2 decades cleaning up the messes of cops like your rookie. The officer's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he motioned to the other officers to step away from the scene. Ethan stood, still holding Emily in his arms. He turned to Lena. We need to make a decision. Do we stay here and fight on their turf? Or do we leave and launch from a distance? Lena didn't hesitate. We're not running. Not now. We'll make them remember our name. The crowd of onlookers didn't disperse. In fact, more people began voicing their outrage. An older couple from Vermont. A Latino family vacationing from Texas. A hotel guest from the UK. They all confirmed what Ethan already knew, he and his family were singled out. A woman from the poolside bar even whispered, this isn't the first time. Last month they kicked out another black family. Ethan's fury turned to focus. They weren't just victims. They were the spark. And they were about to light the fire. By the time the Parker family returned to their room, room 305, the resort was no longer the paradise they had envisioned. Lena paced the suite with her phone pressed to her ear, her voice clear, clipped, and resolute. Yes, Ella. Civil suit. Defamation. Emotional trauma. Racial profiling. And unlawful detainment. I want it all documented by morning. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Emily, who had finally fallen asleep on his shoulder. Jackson sat on the carpet nearby, silent but restless, absently spinning a toy car that had lost one of its wheels. There was a heaviness in the air that no amount of ocean breeze could clear. I'm not going back down to that pool, Jackson mumbled. I don't want to see them again. Ethan looked at him, guilt swelling inside his chest. I know, son. But we don't hide. We confront. But they'll do it again, Jackson said, eyes sharp with the bitterness of a boy forced to grow up too fast. Won't they? Ethan didn't lie. They might. But next time, they'll think twice. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Ethan stood, handing Emily to Lena, who had just ended her call. He looked through the peephole before opening the door slowly. It was Deputy Chief Paulson. His posture was stiff, and his eyes scanned the room with care and caution. Behind him stood the resort manager, visibly uncomfortable. Agent Parker. Mrs. Parker. May I have a word? Lena stepped forward like a force of nature. You mean now that the crowd's gone and you've realized who you cuffed? Paulson's jaw tensed. Yes, ma'am. I know this doesn't undo what happened. But I'm here to take responsibility and make sure your concerns are properly addressed. Properly addressed? Lena echoed. You mean, swept under the rug until the outrage fades? Paulson shook his head. No, ma'am. I mean, Internal Affairs has already been notified. Officer Landon is being relieved of duty pending investigation. And we've launched a preliminary review of officer conduct procedures with civilian guests. Ethan stepped forward, crossing his arms. And what about the resort? Their role in triggering this whole incident? The resort manager looked like he wanted to disappear. Mr. Parker. Mrs. Parker. I assure you, we're horrified by how this played out. You're horrified now, Ethan said coolly. But where was that horror when your staff called the cops instead of the front desk? Or when your guards surrounded my kids at a pool? Paulson sighed. We want to do right by your family. Lena raised her phone. Good. Then you won't mind if I record this. Paulson nodded. Say it again, Lena demanded. Say exactly what you just said, on camera. Paulson cleared his throat, straightened his spine, and looked into the lens. On behalf of the Colusa County Sheriff's Department, we sincerely apologize to Agent Ethan Parker and his family for the mishandling of this incident. There will be disciplinary action taken against those responsible, and the department commits to full transparency and accountability. Lena lowered the phone, expression unreadable. We'll see. Paulson nodded once. I understand. If there's anything else. There is, Ethan said. I want your full report by Friday. And I'll be submitting my own, directly to the Justice Department's Office for Civil Rights. Paulson's eyes twitched. He understood the weight of that. The resort manager cleared his throat. The board would like to offer a formal apology and a permanent resort membership for your family. We're not coming back, Lena snapped. And we don't need your perks. We need systemic change. The manager nodded awkwardly, retreating with Paulson. The door closed behind them. Silence. Then Lena turned to Ethan, her voice low. We've got the apology. Now we make sure this becomes national. Ethan nodded slowly. It's time. By the next morning, the story had gone viral. Lena's short video of Deputy Chief Paulson's on-camera apology had hit social media like a wildfire. Within hours, hashtags like #JusticeForTheParkers, #racial profiling at resort, and #CuffedForVacation were trending nationwide. Civil rights groups reached out. Journalists flooded Lena's inbox. Cable news shows requested interviews. Bloggers dissected every frame of the video, and public opinion split wide open. But inside room 305, the Parker family wasn't celebrating. Jackson sat by the window, staring at the sea without speaking. Emily clung to her stuffed giraffe, quiet and subdued. Lena moved between calls, her voice always calm but growing colder with each retelling of what had happened. And Ethan? Ethan was studying every inch of the resort's official policy handbook, which Lena had demanded the previous night. This clause right here, he said, pointing to a highlighted paragraph, prohibits any employee from engaging with or reporting guests unless there's a clear and present threat. We were sunbathing. There was no threat. They're going to regret underestimating us, Lena muttered, scrolling through news alerts. Channel 8 just confirmed they're running a live piece on it tonight. Prime time. Ethan nodded. That'll help. But I also filed a formal civil rights violation complaint through the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility this morning. And DOJ is aware. This isn't just PR now, it's federal. Suddenly, Jackson turned. Why do we have to prove we're not criminals? He asked. Lena stopped mid-call. Ethan looked up. The question hung in the air like smoke. Because some people don't see us for who we are, Ethan said gently, they only see what they want to believe. But that doesn't mean we stop fighting to show the truth. Jackson looked down. I just don't want to be scared next time. Ethan got up and knelt beside him. Then we speak out. Loudly. Together. That's how we make sure there won't be a next time, not just for us, but for every family who looks like us. There was a knock at the door. This time, it wasn't a cop. It was a camera crew from a major news network. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker," the reporter said warmly. "We understand this is a difficult time. But if you're ready, we'd love to get your side of the story on record." Lena looked at Ethan. He nodded. "Let's make sure the world hears the truth." Within the hour, they were seated across from the reporter on the beach terrace. The camera rolled as Lena recounted the harassment, the handcuffs, the look in their daughter's eyes, and the silence in the crowd, until people started filming. Ethan recounted how he'd seen similar cases in his professional life, but never imagined becoming one. "And yet," the reporter said, "you remained calm. Even while they handcuffed you." Ethan looked into the lens. "Because my kids were watching. And because if I had flinched, they might have done worse." The interview ended, but the fire was just beginning to rage. By nightfall, over 2.1 million views. Outrage poured in from every corner: celebrities, politicians, former FBI directors, even a retired federal judge who had once trained with Ethan. The public demanded consequences. Accountability. Change. And the resort? It issued a second, longer statement, one that didn't offer free stays or polite deflection. This one accepted fault. But Lena and Ethan weren't interested in statements. They were preparing for court. The courtroom was packed. 2 weeks after the incident, Lena stood tall in her navy blue suit, crisp and unshakable, facing the judge with the kind of focus only years of courtroom battle could forge. Ethan sat beside her, this time not as a defendant, not as a victim, but as the plaintiff in a federal civil rights case against both the Colusa County Sheriff's Department and the Seabreeze Resort. And they weren't alone. Rows of supporters filled the benches: activists, legal scholars, community members, and families who had reached out after watching their interview. Some had driven hours just to attend. The Parkers had become a symbol. A symbol of what happens when a system forgets who it serves. The opposing counsel, a gray-haired man representing both the resort and the sheriff's department, wore a polite smile and a tired gaze. He tried to paint the whole thing as a misunderstanding. As unfortunate miscommunication. As an overreaction, perhaps, but nothing malicious. Lena didn't flinch. "Miscommunication is asking twice," she fired back during her opening statement. "Cuffing a federal agent in front of his children, after verifying his ID, is a violation. Filmed violations. Witnessed violations. Violations that left a lasting trauma on a family just trying to enjoy their vacation." The judge listened closely, flipping through the documentation. Photos. Security logs. Ethan's badge and clearance records. Testimonies from bystanders. Screen captures from the now viral video. Then came the testimonies. Jackson, called gently to the stand, spoke in a clear voice, though his hands fidgeted. "They didn't believe my dad," he said. "Even when he showed them who he was. And they scared my sister. She had nightmares for days." Emily, too young to testify formally, sat beside a child psychologist in the gallery, her little legs swinging nervously, holding her stuffed giraffe. Then Ethan took the stand. He spoke not as an agent, but as a father. "I've served my country. I've worked undercover, led high-stakes arrests, and protected this nation. But the day I was handcuffed for sitting beside a pool, that's the day my daughter asked me if being black was a crime." The courtroom was silent. The defense attempted to counter with procedural manuals, good faith arguments, and vague references to resort security challenges. But the damage was done. Public opinion had already cemented its verdict, and now it was time for the law to follow. After 3 days of testimony, the judge recessed. Lena and Ethan stepped outside into the warm afternoon sun, surrounded by microphones. "Will you settle if they offer?" one reporter shouted. Lena didn't even blink. "We didn't come for money. We came for accountability. For justice." And for change. Back at the resort, policies were already being rewritten. The head of security had resigned. Officer Landon was suspended without pay and now faced his own internal disciplinary hearing. But none of it brought back the look in Emily's eyes. None of it restored what was taken from Jackson's innocence. What it did do was set a precedent. A powerful black family, targeted without cause, stood up and fought back, and now the system was forced to reckon with it. The final court decision was pending, but the message was clear: silence is complicity, and the Parkers refused to be silent. The courtroom buzzed as everyone filed back in for the verdict. Ethan held Lena's hand. Her grip was steady. Behind them sat a quiet army, friends, supporters, legal allies, even strangers who had followed their story online. Jackson sat beside a teacher from his school, nervous but proud. Emily sat on Lena's lap, holding tight to her stuffed giraffe, her curls resting on her mother's shoulder. The judge entered. Everyone rose. And then, after reviewing hours of testimony, witness statements, video footage, and internal memos that Lena's legal team had subpoenaed, the judge began reading the decision. In the matter of Ethan Parker and Lena Parker versus the Colusa County Sheriff's Department and Seabreeze Resort Management. The air thickened. This court finds that the defendants violated the plaintiff's civil rights through unlawful detainment, discriminatory profiling, and the use of excessive authority absent legal cause. There was an audible gasp. Lena closed her eyes for a moment. Ethan exhaled deeply. Emily looked up, sensing the shift in the room. The judge continued. Let the record show, being a person of color in a space of privilege does not constitute probable cause. The court orders a formal apology from the defendants, monetary restitution, and mandatory retraining for all involved officers and resort staff. Furthermore, this court recommends the Department of Justice open an investigation into patterns of profiling at both institutions. Applause broke out in the gallery before the judge could call for order. The fight was over, at least in court. But the Parkers knew their real work had just begun. Later that week, Ethan stood before a packed auditorium at a civil rights symposium in D.C. He wore a suit, not his FBI badge, but the uniform of a father, a husband, a man who had been publicly humiliated and had chosen to rise instead of retreat. Justice, he said into the microphone, isn't a destination. It's something we chase, tooth and nail, every day. You don't wait for it. You become it. Lena spoke next, her words fierce and clear. We didn't win just for our family. We won for every parent who's had to explain to their child why they were treated differently. For every kid who's ever asked, why did they do that to us? This is how change begins, with resistance, with truth, and with refusing to stay silent. Back home, Jackson sat at his desk writing an essay for school titled, What My Family Taught Me About Standing Up. His teacher would later call it the most powerful thing she'd ever read from a 12-year-old. Emily drew a picture of their family standing tall in front of a courtroom, her father in the middle, smiling, not in cuffs, but holding her hand. And the resort? It became a case study. Every employee underwent anti-bias training. The manager who allowed the call to police was fired. A public plaque now stood at the front desk, engraved with the words, "This resort stands against discrimination in all forms. Justice for the Parker family." But the most lasting change wasn't policy. It was awareness. The viral video, the courtroom battle, the speeches, they awakened something. Conversations started in homes, in police departments, in boardrooms. The Parker family's story inspired petitions, new training laws, and even a federal review on resort security policies. One family. One moment. One refusal to back down. That's all it took. They didn't ask to become a symbol. They simply chose not to be victims. This has been another powerful story from True Echo, where every voice matters, and every story echoes the truth. If Ethan and Lena's courage moved you, share this video. Talk about it. Don't let silence win. Justice isn't given. It's claimed. Subscribe for more real, gripping, and emotional stories that reflect the strength of everyday people. Let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever witnessed something that changed the way you see the world? Together, let's keep the truth echoing.